Alright, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Back to Tevesh Szat, back to the BullSzat deck. For a couple of reasons. One is that I found a few cards that I really like in this deck, and I tried them out. I've been trying a lot of different things here and there, including multiple different decks. But I don't know, I enjoy this deck a good bit. I don't necessarily love it. It's kind of a blight on the format, honestly, but the format is heavily blighted with many problems. But that's for another video. In the meantime, let's talk about the changes I made that have attracted me back to the deck and made the deck quite interesting to play. One of them is the addition of this Relic of Legends, which came out in Dominaria United, and basically allows any of your legendary creatures to act as though they come with their own Paradise Mantle built in, which is kind of cool. Even if they have Summoning Sickness, you can use them that way. But this card got me thinking of an old school card, Champions of Kamigawa, or a very old card, right? And Honor-Worn Shaku does not need it to be a creature, which makes all the difference in the world, because they made Planeswalkers into legendaries. So this thing will tap, I don't know, Niv-Mizzet, a Tevesh Szat, Ugin, Godpharaoh statue, whatever you got. If it's a legend, you can tap it to untap this thing and then tap this thing for mana. In this deck, as it turns out, there are a lot of legends. And this thing will sometimes function as something stronger than a Thran Dynamo. You know, the 4-mana card that makes 3? It's a 3-mana card that makes 4 sometimes, or more. It's really crazy in here, and has made the deck kind of interesting to me again, just having something along those lines. The other change, though, is that decided to try out this card. So Guild Artisan is a enchantment background. Commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, you create 2 treasure tokens. And I don't think we can... Yeah, we can't play... I don't know what the rule is. Not a valid partner. So can we even play... Yeah, it doesn't work that way. I don't know how the backgrounds actually work, but it doesn't matter, because the way that we're using it is it's just a 2-mana enchantment that says when you attack with Rog, get 2 treasures. And it's a legendary enchantment that Honor-Worn Shaku. You can tap an enchantment to untap this thing, and so it actually acts as a mana source for that as well. Super cool stuff. Not too many other changes. The cuts, I cut Collective Brutality and a few other cards that were flex slots, so I don't think it's terribly important, or that they'll be missed terribly. There is a card coming from the next set that I think will be very interesting and worth taking a look at. The card is called the Golden Throne. I think it's the next set. It's coming from Warhammer 20k. A legendary artifact that's been spoiled that... it costs 4 mana, and if you would lose the game, you exile it, and your life total becomes 1, which means that if somebody Thassa's Oracle combos you, stay alive at 1, and they have no library, so presumably they lose on the next turn, which is nice. So it does make it a little harder for them to go off in that way. Of course, this card won't really save you if you have, like, say the Thassa's Oracle combo you drop to 1, and then during your upkeep you have like a Mana Crypt or a Dark Confidant or something like that. Well, then you're probably going to lose, but it does at least give you a little bit of hope. But that's not the main reason to play it. It is an interesting reason, though. And the main reason to play it is it also says tap and sacrifice a creature to add 3 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. So it's basically like a 4-mana Gilded Lotus in this deck, where you almost always have spare creatures laying around. And the ability to just tap and essentially just tap the Dark Ritual is nutty. Or effectively, well, I guess it's like Dark Ritualing, because you're losing a card but you're gaining 3 mana. Except in this case, you don't have to spend any mana to do it. You just have a Rog or a Tevesh token or whatever. So that card's going to be very interesting, I think, from the next set. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye out for that, rather. But in the meantime, let's take a look at how the deck's been doing. So I was testing a bunch of other stuff, finding I didn't necessarily enjoy it. In the last 7 days, I had a huge break from the, well, huge break for me. I took 7 days off because I was really getting burnt out by Thassa's Oracle combo and things of that nature. I just I find it to be so tedious. All these decks that can just win on 3 mana or less are very, in a way that doesn't require you, like it doesn't require an opponent. I think one person killed me on turn 0. If we were playing a 4-player game, all 4 players at the table would have lost the game before they took their first turn. And stuff like that, to me, is pretty dumb. It was a matter of Lion's Eye Diamonds, some other artifact mana, Underworld Breach, and they had the blue card that has Storm that mills yourself. So they just milled themselves for a ton and then replayed all that, churned up a ton of mana, and then played Thassa's Oracle and killed me. And yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'm not playing blue, so I guess I lose. And that's kind of the state of Commander right now, is not completely, but in a lot of ways, if you aren't playing with Force of Will and cards like that, you are going to lose a number of games because you can't interact with the combos at all, and they will kill you as early as turn 0 from your point of view. And I guess that the Rules Committee is happy with that being the case. A format that requires Force of Will but doesn't allow you to play it unless you have a blue commander, and only allows you to have one of them. Or 2 of them if you have Force of Negation, if it's going to save you. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little jaded, but to me that just seems dumb, frankly. But speaking of dumb, this deck's pretty dumb too. And at the very least, it's dumb in a way that I find enjoyable, because you are going to be interacting with your opponent. You're going to be targeting their stuff, attacking their hand, disrupting them, attacking them. You're going to be, playing Magic. So I like that. Anyway, I like broken, but I also like interaction. So broken interaction, and this deck is the king of broken interaction for sure. All right, so I'm going to skip the 26th. There were definitely some games. You can see I had the 1 loss here. On the 20th, this was before I took my break. I wasn't even playing this deck. I was testing out some of those others. But you can see the deck's been on a tear for the last basically 30 games. It's had the 1 loss on the 26th. And that was before I switched the build completely over to what it is now. I've only played a handful with the new build, so I'm not necessarily trying to sell this as the be-all, end-all. But I do suggest that you give it a shot, because right now it feels kind of absurd, and I love it. So let's take a look at the games for the 27th. Unfortunately, I have to work soon, and I only have time to go through these games. But I believe there are some very interesting ones here for you. There may have been a couple on the 26th that are so good, as I recall, that I might actually have to go back and record them. But to do that, I'll have to dig through them and pick out which ones were which, and then make those into their own video. So that'll be a potential project for a later date. But in the meantime, let's take a look at the 27th, starting with Rahodo as my first opponent. And Rahodo is playing a Azika, God of the Tree deck. My hand is got some interaction, acceleration. Seems good. I'll keep it. Especially because we have not only Inquisition to possibly stop myself from being killed by Thassa's Oracle on turn 2, but I also have a Shattering Spree to possibly not lose to like a turn 1 Soul Ring. So for those reasons, the hand is solid. And no Soul Ring, so we'll go the Inquisition route. Despite that, it makes Jessica's Will worse. And I don't see any Thassa's Oracles here, but I do see an interesting build. At any rate, if I take Nature's Lore here, I'm definitely slowing my opponent's turn 2 down, barring any top decks. On the other hand, Oko is a very challenging card to deal with once it gets going. So there's a case to be made for taking the card that I will struggle to handle. And then finally, Chromatic Lantern is of course an option, but we certainly don't want to take that when I have the solution to that card already in my hand. So it's between these two, and I decide, given I don't see a third land here, I'm going to take the Lore and try to get at the Oko if it takes my opponent too long to get the Oko down, I can actually Yogg Will just for a land and a Inquisition, make it a value will, and deal with the Oko that way. So I'm going to take the Nature's Lord, play Rog, always play Rog. And my opponent does Watery Grave Pass, which is what we were expecting. I have a cough drop. I'm cheeking. Hopefully it's not bothering the sound, but I'm watching my friend's dogs while she's stateside visiting her family. And I have a slight allergy to dogs, so dog hair. So I wanted to use a cough drop to not be coughing throughout the video. Anyway, with the Thoughtseize off the top, I don't have to wait a turn to do the will thing. And I really hate that I'm hurting my own Jessica's will. However, Oko is too much of a risk to mess around with, so I'm going to Thoughtseize here and I'm going to take it, or at least that's my plan. And seeing the Vraska my opponent drew does not change that plan, so we'll go ahead and take out the Oko. Feel much better now. And I play Ancient Tomb here because on the next turn, if I decide to do the will play, I need the Tomb in play rather than the Catacombs, so that I can will play the Arid Mesa and then play like one of the Thoughtseizes again. Alternately, if I want to play Jessica's Will next turn, I want to do it without playing lands, so that any lands I hit, I can then play. All right. Opponent draws for the turn. This is a play, and well, not looking good for the opponent. We're going to go ahead and Jessica's Will here, and I get a bunch of red, and here you get to see one of the silly, how silly these cards are. All right, so I was thinking I would just play land and Mind Twist my opponent, and that would be that. There is, of course, a chance that my opponent's drawing a counterspell, though, so if I can take advantage of some of these cards and develop my board and pressure them later with a Mind Twist, that might be better. So I'm going to give that a shot and see what my opponent's got. So the first thing I decided to do is I'm just going to go for Chandra. My opponent counters here. Fine. Honestly, I could just play a land and then try to like Yogg Will. Or, yeah, I could Mind Twist for one and then like Yogg Will a Jessica's, perhaps. Anyway, they don't have interaction, though. I mean, it was very unlikely, right? They would have had to have drawn it that turn. But now I get to add 2 red to my mana pool and play the Honor-Worn Shaku. And Shaku gets to tap for 1, 2, a 3, a 3. 3 mana off of a 3 mana artifact. It's a Thran Dynamo that costs 3. Nutty. And of course with this setup here, well, we have Giant Mind Twist, Giant Yogg Will coming, both threatening next turn. But before we get to the next turn, my opponent scoops it up. Like, how insane. I put 2, 3, 6 mana into play on that one turn. Permanent mana. I got Jessica's Will mana temporary and replaced it with permanents. Awesome. Anyway, it's possible Relic was a mistake there. Shaku definitely wasn't, but I could have played the Shaku for free, tapped for 3 colorless and then a black, and then Mind Twisted my opponent for like 3, and then followed it up next turn with another twist. Might have been a better play, but hell, I was having fun. All right, let's take a look at the next game against poor Maddie. And most of the time, by the way, when I'm playing with my chat hidden because I got tired of people being bad sports. All right, poor Maddie's playing Oswald Fiddlebender, a very powerful prison commander. It can contain, well, I think actually poor Maddie's going to put up a pretty good showing of exactly what it can do. So you'll see. And I've got Jeweled Lotus. So I mean, I've got interaction. I've got Lotus. I've got Karn against an artifact-based commander. Seems like a keep to me. All right, so my opponent leads Hall of the Bandit Lord, which would give this thing haste. A Mox Amber that's currently not active. An LED. Okay, are they going to just dump it into Oswald? No. Okay, well, for my part, I don't want this thing coming down with haste. Obviously, if my opponent plays Plains, activates this in a Plains, it has haste and activates the Mox Amber, sacking the LED, for example. I don't know. It's not good. So I'm going to just kill this, even though I don't I don't love the position this puts me in. We'll go ahead and play my 0-drop, and we'll play my other 0-drop. And my opponent currently has the LED mana, potentially, but they're going to draw to their 5th card, and maybe that will deter my opponent from using the mana in that way. You know, because right now, they can't use the Mox Amber yet for the Oswald. Doesn't even matter. There's a Mox Diamond to go with all of it. So now Oswald's down. Oh, Amber's on. My opponent's got tons of mana, and I'm way behind. Brutal. Well, I can duress. A little late now. I needed to duress away the Mox Diamond. Or something. I don't know. But I have no other play to make, so let's go ahead and see what we can do here. And there's an Amaria's Call and a Giganjo Castle. So there was no chance that I was going to stop my opponent from getting mana. Of course, I'll just take the only card I can. Pass for the turn. Opponent plays a land, which tells me that they're still holding the castle. I think that was a mistake. They should have played the castle. The card I knew about, not the card I didn't know about. But whatever. Very small one. So they can eat the Lion's Eye Diamond and fetch a Pithing Needle on Tevesh Szat. Alright. Well, unfortunately, Dreadboard does not kill artifacts. One thing I really don't like about it. I don't have much of a play here, so I'm going to go ahead and just take out their Oswald. Only because I know they have a Giganjo Castle and they're going to play it again. But if I draw a removal, then I can keep it off the board for a while. And if I don't draw a removal, at least it's not getting activated this turn. Plus, there's a chance my opponent does something like play something else that isn't Oswald, and then they have to choose between the two options. So this seemed like a good tempo play, basically. It's costing me a card for nothing. But it's hard to know what my opponent would have tutored out if they could have this turn. So, okay. Alright, so do I draw removal? Well, I don't. Fine. I'm going to just go ahead and play the commander here. I can't do anything with it. But hey, it's in play. Just use my mana efficiently. Might be a mistake because my opponent could attack it, and then how am I going to get it back down? But alright, for my opponent's turn, he's going to go ahead and eat his Mox Amber and fetch himself up a Esper Sentinel. It's an annoyance. I don't want my opponent drawing cards, but I would gladly let them draw a card in order to play a card and then start killing their cards and turning off some of their ability to make this game harder for me than it has to be. Unfortunately, my opponent also has an Archon of Emeria, so I'm going to fetch in response. So non-basic lands I control come into play tapped, and nobody can play more than one spell per turn. So this is another frustrating effect for me to have to deal with. But I really wasn't playing more than one spell per turn anyway, so it might be more frustrating for my opponent. Well, you'd say that, but then look at my top deck here. Diabolic Intent. So the port has to come into play tapped because of this thing. And then I'm going to have to tutor here. Can't even make guys to do it with. At least I can pay for the one and not give my opponent a card, but really bad news. I got to deal with the Pithing Needle. All of these things are a problem. Who knows what else this is going to fetch, so I might want artifact kill. How the heck do I deal with creatures and artifacts all at once? Well, I figure the best answer, and this may have been a mistake in hindsight, but I go for Fiery Confluence. I might have the Confluence for 2, dealing 2 to this, 2 to this, 2 to this, which means it'll live, but then killing the Pithing Needle and allowing me to plus up Tevesh, and then use Tevesh to find my way back into the game, possibly. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is what things look like right now. But if I draw artifact removal, then I can do this on 3 and kill them all. Or if I draw creature removal, then I can switch this mode and kill artifacts. And because of that flexibility, I decided to get this, and it might just bite my butt. Might have been a mistake. Alright, so I figured Tevesh is dead here. My opponent would just attack and kill it, but he wants to use Oswald, so actually my opponent only hits it for 1 and hits me for 2. A very strange choice. I think you got to kill Planeswalkers when you can. I don't think leaving them in play is a good idea. In the meantime, my opponent kills their Esper Sentinel here and fetches a Sphere of Resistance. Okay, so I can't Confluence unless I draw my only basic land. I do not draw my only basic land. Why? Because they come into play tapped. And I can't play Karn or Fiery Confluence because they cost 1 more to cast. Alright, so my opponent's turn is going to Archon face me. I guess he's feeling pretty comfortable with the Pithing Needle there. This will end up biting my opponent a bit. Gets rid of the Sphere and plays Tanglewire. Dang it. So, the other thing I have to be aware of is that my opponent can prevent 2 damage to legendary creatures. So I kind of need to port this before I Confluence, so I'm trying to set that up as well. And now I've got the Tanglewire to worry about. Well, I might as well play the land that comes into play tapped either way. And you can see how locked down I am into this. I mean, have I even played this game? So my opponent plays Sanctum Prelate. They get to choose a number, non-creature spells of manic value equal to the chosen number can't be cast. So this will affect my opponent as well. So I have to figure out what casting cost neither of us can play. They choose 2. Seems good. Fortunately, no real effect on me. But I see why they did it because of cards like, Demonic Tutor. It makes a lot of sense. Alright, so for my turn, still got to bow to the Tanglewire. Play another tapped land. I can finally cast a spell. Of course, I can't cast another one this turn because of the Archon. But I will Imperial Seal and figure out what you might get in this situation by pausing. And in the meantime, opponent's going to put Tanglewire on the stack. I'm going to respond to it by porting their Iganjo Castle. So the reason I respond to the Tanglewire being on the stack is that if I port their castle and they decide that they would like to use Oswald Fiddlebender, they have to use this as a sorcery, so this is 1 less mana for them to use as a sorcery, and it makes it the tiniest bit more interesting for them to make a decision regarding how they want to tap cards. Most likely it's just going to be Wire and Needle. But there's a small chance, as here for example, that my opponent might want to use the castle, in which case I'm taking mana away from them during their upkeep before they draw and see, oh, maybe I should save that mana or something, right? So they do. And then my opponent sacks their Tanglewire. What is nasty now? Hammer of Nazahan comes into play, equips a creature automatically, because that's what it does, and gives it +2/+0 and indestructible, so I'm assuming Tevesh is definitely dead now. But my opponent actually just hits me in the face and leaves my commander. And now I finally, hopefully you guessed correctly on which card I fetched, but I'm finally in this game. And because I got Confluence thinking I was going to kill creatures earlier, but it has modes on it, I was able to get a different card this time. I got Covenant because I thought I would have to work around possibly another Tanglewire effect or something similar. For example, my opponent might have Oswald Fiddlebender into a Sculpting Steel and copied it. But fortunately it did not happen, so now I can use Confluence as artifact kill, which is fantastic because boom, 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 this will take this out, which means this is no longer indestructible. The Needle, which is locking down Tevesh, and I might as well take his Mox Diamond out while I'm able to do so. I'll make some guys, and then just sit tight on the Covenant for now, because I'm hoping to get a tiny bit more value out of it, actually. Alright, so my opponent swings in, I'm just going to block, and they're just going to deal 2 to Tevesh. With nothing happening, cool. We'll just play a little draw go for now. I can cast Karn at least here and give them something else to swing at if they choose. But that means that any creatures that they get into, any artifacts they get into play, if it has an activation cost, they won't be able to use it. But they'll most likely want to tinker it with the Oswald and find something, like a Tanglewire that doesn't have an activation cost. It's just good by existing. In the meantime, though, they're just going to attack, and I'm going to block, and Tevesh goes to 3 again. Magistrate. Lovely. Okay, that's enough value. Time to pull the trigger. Let's tap down the damage prevention and just any tricks they might have. I have everything I need to win this game. I don't need a Vampiric Tutor here. So I am going to first, remember I can only play one non-creature spell per turn, which was the other reason I didn't Confluence, like Covenant right away. And then on the next, so remember I did the Confluence, but I can only play one spell per turn because of the 2/3 flyer. So I couldn't just kill him with Covenant right away. And then my opponent untapped Igandro Castle, and it would have cost me more life to kill it. So I stalled this way because I was cognizant of the fact that I was a little low on life. And in order to kill those, I would have had to deal two extra to Oswald, 2 extra to any other legendaries that my opponent had. I don't know. It was doable. This just made more sense to me. And now we win the game. So, Tevesh mocks the Vamp. And let's lock my opponent down under Winter Orb. Now I'll just Winter Orb port my opponent for the rest of the game. And draw some cards. Orb port my opponent. Make sure they can't get in this game. And draw some more cards. Because I found the Sword of Feast and Famine, I'm going to let my opponent untap their lands. But they're not going to like it very much. So the way that I do this is I make Winter Orb into a creature. Play Sword of Feast and Famine. Equip it. Swing in. Untap all of my lands. Inquisition my opponent. Take out their Disenchant over there. Play my Chandra. Make mana. Play my Rog. And I am done for the turn. And then during upkeep, I'm going to port them as well. At this point, opponent's had enough. Winter Orb is tapped, so on my turn, I get to untap all of this, include all of my land and the Winter Orb. And then we'll just go back to playing a Winter Orb game by continuously using port. But remember, with the sword, I get to port them, equip the sword, swing in, untap all my lands, port them again. So there's no, that was the final turn for my opponent to do anything, basically. So I managed to win that game where my opponent had a crushing amount of control over my ability, a prison element, actually, essentially, over my ability to play it. Unfortunately, dug my way out of it. All right, DV Rosar, and this is what I mean. The deck's broken, but it has long game and it has interaction. Like, it's the games, to me, that's fun and interesting. Like, that's what this channel's about. Not, and then I cast Thassa's Oracle and then I played Demonic Consultation, and then I cast Thassa's Oracle and then I played Demonic Consultation. Like, that's not why I made this channel, frankly. It's not interesting to me. Look, if you love it, I'm not saying anything about you. Don't take it personally, please. I find that combo and that play style to be absolutely degenerate and not worth my time and not interesting and not something that I want to see in the format. But it says nothing about the person who plays it. I have no hard feelings, no ill will. I don't think you're less of a person for playing it. It just doesn't interest me. All right, so Divorsar is playing with Niv-Mizzet, Perrin, and obviously I have a super ridiculous hand. Here's another card I'd love to see banned. I'd love to see Ad Nauseam ban cards. It's a game-ruining card, basically, because you'll have a game and then Ad Nauseam just shows up and ruins the game. Almost always. There will be an exception to that, however. All right, so my opponent's got just a basic land signet start, right? Very fair. Mine is a little bit less fair, obviously, as I get 3 mana on turn 1 and turn 2 smokestack, which is pretty gross. So now I can start pressuring my opponent's ability to get to the point that they can play their uncounterable thing. Opponent has a Goblin Electromancer, 3 cards in hand. So I am worried about whatever this might indicate, whatever combo this is. I'm going to go ahead and start ticking the smokestack up right away. Always click on the sit counter, put it at the bottom, then put the sacrifice on top, sacrifice 0, and add the counter. All right, with the Demonic Tutor off the top, I'll go ahead and just tutor first. And my opponent has a stopper for that, so seems reasonable. So I will slow the game down a bit. Let's get him under a Winter Orb Smokestack combo. Cough drop like melted. Anyway, so I'm not sure what they sack here. More than likely the Sensei's Divining Top is what I would assume. Is there a reason? Did we get stuck? There we go. Is what I would assume, but actually they sacked the Electromancer. And I can see a reasoning for it, given that Black-Red's pretty good at killing creatures, and it's the most fragile permanent. But on the other hand, you just killed a mana source under a Winter Orb. I don't know if I agree with that, but I don't know what's in my opponent's hand, so, you know, maybe. Anyway, it's bad news for my opponent either way, right? All right, so I'm going to have to sack something. I'm going to sack my free card. Go ahead and play a land here. And kind of thinking about what to do. I could, like, replay my commander, for example, and an Imperial Seal. Could possibly will. Doesn't seem right to me. I could just kind of chill out for an Ad Nauseam. And I think, you know, I'm just going to kind of do nothing, because an Ad Nauseam at instant speed, like I said, it just wins the game. So, of course, I can play my commander, but it's a big risk into this open mana. I don't think I'm going to do that. Opponent tops here, which seems crazy, and then they just die. The smokestack kills my opponent, right? So on their turn, they can sack the top, and they can untap like their Volcanic Island and sack like these two permanents here, but then they're stuck with this. It's getting pretty rough for my opponent, and not really hurting me much at all. So they concede, and we move on to a game against Lucas Milva. I've got to hurry, as I'm running out of time before work starts. Playing the Ur-Dragon, I've got a very good hand. Shatterskull Smashing into Ragavan is a great way to start a game. I am unfortunately going second, though, so... And there's a Guild Artisan off the top, which could provide value, except I am a complete bonehead and don't play Rogah here. Like, what am I doing? Like, it's so important that I have Rogah in play. Opponent plows that. And if I had Rogah in play, I don't know. Well, as it turns out, I couldn't do anything this turn. But if I had Rogah in play and drew a land, or had a way to produce black, then things would have been popping off. So luckily, you know, I wasn't punished, I guess, but opponent for their turn plays a Dragon Tempest, which will punish me if my opponent resolves any dragons, so let's hope that that doesn't happen. Land off the top is beautiful right there. Allows me to... I have to think about how to sequence this, but I decide I'm going to play Guild Artisan, swing, get the 2 treasure tokens. That turns on the Opal. Post-combat, I'll ritual out the Tevesh. Excuse me, make some thralls and pass. And if Rogah isn't killed, I get 2 more mana next turn. Oops. Yeah, this is gross. So let's draw some cards. Look at that, Honorworn Shaku. 2 treasure tokens. Excuse me. This is just getting ridiculous. I'm going to go ahead and expedition map for Workshop. Shop into a Shaku. And then Shaku produces 1 mana. 2 mana. And I can tap it for 3 mana and still. But at this point, I decided I'm going to wait. I was thinking I was going to Death Cloud for a bit there, and I decided to hold off. And for my greed, I'm slightly punished here. My opponent thought seizes. So obviously, you take the Death Cloud, right? Well, for some reason, my opponent takes Angress Rampage. I have no clue what that's about. But I will call them and go ahead and grab 2 more treasure tokens while I'm at it. Let's see what they got, right? So first of all, let's make some mana. That's 2 with the Shaku. That's 3 off of Karn. So like I said, 3. It's a Thran Dynamo for less mana. Karn came down so easy that I'm like, let's just go for it. Cloud for 4. It hits. Okay. And with that, my opponent scoops. They would have a Dragon Tempest in play and no permanents against this board. Shaku tapping for 1, 2, 3, 4 mana per turn right now. Not to mention more when Rog comes down and produces like treasures from my artisan ship. Pretty good. Anyway, MXSP is my next opponent. I've got to hustle. And they're playing Animatu, the Fate Shifter. This is not a keepable hand here. This is weak, but keepable. And I mean, I have a Saga. I can potentially ramp. So I'll risk it. Turn 1 Saga. My opponent has Confluence into Mox. That's not good. Let's get the cliffs down and pass for the turn. Opponent vaults. And I'm like, what are they getting here? Are they just going to combo kill me? They're going to disenchant my Saga. Are they going to like do something busted? Throw out a Jace or something? Well, they are doing something busted. Mox Amber, Mox Opal. And Ashiok the Dream Render. I can't search my library now. And my opponent can exile my graveyard. And it sucks when you can't search your library when you have a Saga. Well, I'm going to float some in off of it, but geez. Alright. And with that in mind, I'll go ahead and play a Shattering Spree. Now, I did float the mana, so if I guess they have like a Force Spike effect, I can pay for it. But I'm going to shatter the Diamond and the Amber, which currently works, and that'll leave an Opal that doesn't. So, right, just like that, my opponent hoses my mana pretty hard, but I get a return the favor. Opponent misses a land drop here. Play an Urborg and use that to cast Necro. Does it stick? Oh, it does. How delicious. And from my opponent's turn, they miss another land drop. Now we just go crazy. And we're going to go ahead and Necro and Dust Bowl my opponent, who's already having big problems. And I'm going to Dust Bowl during upkeep, sacrificing, or if they tap out, to play like an end of turn impulse or something. Either one. Alright, upkeep. So we'll Dust Bowl. That way if they have like Teferi's Response, they're tapped out for the turn. I'll sack the Urborg and kill the Confluence, and this will take out both of their black sources. Mine and theirs. Okay, beautiful. And with that, my opponent concedes. Awesome. Nasty start, but they weren't able to, I guess, seal the deal there. So Rahodo, again, Rahodo. Jumps back in another game, this time with Azika. Again, and leads off with an early Rafine's Tower. I have an okay hand that gets quite good when the Grim Monolith shows up. I mean, it's Ancient Tomb and a Demonic Tutor, so we don't want to mulligan that, but opponent plays a Bloom Tender. And yeah, I've got Sword, Demonic Tutor, Soul Ring, Equip, Swing, get my mana back, and then I realize, wait a minute, I can't kill that thing, and I don't have double red. Oh well, or red or black. So, not as good of a turn as I wanted, but still pretty good. Opponent plays a Bird of Paradise, that doesn't block. Swords. I'm gonna calling the weak. It's just gross. Alright, so I'm gonna swing in, float mana, resolve the sword, untap the Grim, sack, and then go ahead and play my commander. It lands, so let's try a Fiery Covenant. It lands, so let's try a Smokestack and 2 creatures, one of whom will be carrying a sword next turn. And my opponent, I do believe, concedes at that point, which I don't blame him. Alright, on to Pope John here. Pope John playing Liliana, Heretical Healer. I've got a very solid hand. This is very important. Having a discard and a Vandal Blast or an artifact kill is so important early on in this format. We got to stop the nonsense, right? So these are my options. It's a real weird one. I could take Waste Not as the payoff card for making me discard, or I could take the cards that make me discard, the Oppression. But I decide that Oppression affects both players, and I can draw lots of cards, so Oppression really should just be really bad for my opponent. Basically, they'll use their turn to make themselves discard, and me, but worse for them, right? So I'm going to take the payoff card, so I take Waste Not. None of the other cards were a consideration. Alright, opponent just plays a land. Get a map, slow start, but a reasonable one. Alright, opponent plays Bloodghast. I've got a land here, so I can play the Relic. And my opponent does in fact play the Oppression. So I'm going to tap for 2 with my Relic, and go ahead and grab a Strip Mine. And then from here, we'll go ahead and play Tevesh Szat. I do have to discard a card, so I throw away Vandal Blast. I didn't see any targets at all, so I'll go ahead and Tevesh and draw more cards before deciding what to do. And decide the play here is just going to be Strip Mine and pass. Unfortunately, my opponent bogs my Strip Mine, so no Strip Mine recursion this game, and attacks Tevesh, of course. Has no play over there, so the Oppression's not really affecting them yet. I'll make some creatures. Relic does not work with Tevesh like Worn Shaku does, unless Tevesh is a creature. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and just Dust Bowl my opponent, and then play Curse and throw away an extra land. Because Curse will produce more mana than that land will, more than likely. Opponent attacks Tevesh and still doesn't have a play. Plays Necrogen Miss. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card. So they have to throw away a card to Oppression. They throw away Lake of the Dead. That makes sense. And now I'm going to have to throw away an extra card. So I'll toss the Tower here, presuming I can find more mana somehow. Alright, I'm going to play the Mox Amber. I'm going to throw away Dark Confidant here. I've got enough card drawing, honestly. Speaking of card drawing, Sword of Fire and Ice comes down. We'll equip it and swing. I get a treasure for that. And then kill that creature. And I did, of course, draw a land, as I was saying. But I don't need to play it, so I'm going to hold it and throw away the Necrogen Mist. Opponent plays Damnation. It throws away Damnation. Plays Liliana, has to throw away another card, Rindscarred Demon. Alright, pitching the land here. And I'm going to go ahead and just make some tokens. I know that's going to be what happens this turn. And I will play Liliana, throw away a land. And my opponent finally scoops. Liliana is going to take the Liliana and play off a play. I'll attack with the sword, get an extra card. And then I have K-Command, and I can let my opponent discard to Necrogen Miss, and then during their draw step, I'll K-Command, make them discard whatever it is that they would have drawn for the turn, while discarding whatever my other card is, if it's not that good, and returning Dark Confidant to my hand. So, good stuff there, but my opponent's playing cards that are just too symmetrical, and unfortunately not too good against a deck that has a personal Howling Mine called Tevesh Szat. And finally, a game against Emma Donkey. Always exceptional opponent, playing combo, as he typically does. But he has to mulligan twice. I'm going first and I have a Soul Ring, so looking good from here, right? As long as I don't dork this up. And I do actually make a mistake that hurts me in this game. Look at that. Turn 2, Honor Worn Shaku. Quite happy to see it. So I actually have 3 mana right now. Alright, opponent Imperial Seals. I'm going to go ahead and fetch at the end of their turn for the last fetchable duel. Alright, so for my turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and play a land first, just in case I have Spell Pierce. Alright, Tevesh sticks, very nice. And I'll go ahead and draw some cards. Play Paradise Mantle. I've still got 3 mana, by the way, because I can tap Tevesh with the Honor Worn Shaku. But I think Thoughtseize looks a little bit more reasonable here, so I'm going to go that route. Opponent pierces and misses the fact that, and I don't blame him, because Honor Worn Shaku probably shouldn't work this way, but it does. Let's untap it, and then pay for the pierce, and take a, ooh, yuck. Let's take that tutor out of their hand, leave them with just the mana ramp. Hopefully the next card is in like Wheel of Fortune or something. Or, you know, Necropotence, right? I mean, if it's me, it'd probably be Necropotence, but anyway, my opponent gives me a Spirit Token, plays their Silas, passes for the turn. So they've got Desperate Rachel and whatever it was they tutored for. So I'm trying to get at that card or get at their manas. And I make a big mistake here. So this is the turn I almost lose the game. So I play Sword of Fire and Ice. 1, 2, equip it. I think. I want to fetch, by the way, I fetch there first so that I don't accidentally draw the only fetchable target. Alright, so let's get it equipped. Swing in. Draw Gravin Cairns. Play Roga. Produce yet some more mana. Kill their creature and take Desperate Ritual out of their hand. I don't know what's in their hand, but I got to make it hard as I can for them to play it. Maybe the ritual is important. Hopefully it's not half of Thassa's Oracle, because if it's Thassa's Oracle and they draw the correct card here, I just instantly die, regardless of the game state. Well, that didn't happen, so there's Eclipse. So still like unsure what that last card is. And this is okay. This is the turn where I make the mistake. I'll point it out in a moment. So I'm going to draw some extra cards. And there's the mistake. I play Saga before, just because I have, oh yeah, I've got Saga, play Saga before Inquisition. And I pay for it mightily. Because I Inquisition my opponent. He's got Ad Nauseam. That's the card he tutored for, and I can't stop it unless I can attack his mana. Not this way. But you say, well, you don't have a way to attack his mana. Well, I could. And I do. Oh my gosh. That Urza Saga was so dumb. If my opponent top decks a land here and draws like 11 cards and friggin' kills me, I'm going to be so pissed at myself, right? But I can't kick myself for this, so I'm just going to have to like do my best to play and move on. And of course my opponent does draw the land. Oh, so brutal. But I draw a Mind Twist, and because I drew a Mind Twist here, there's an interesting play I can make. I can force my opponent to go get his cards now, and I can attempt to attack the cards. So let's do that. So after thinking about it, normally I go after City of Brass, but my opponent's kind of low, and this is an ad nauseum, so City might actually be problematic for them. So I'll go after the Grave instead. Doing my best to make triple black hard for my opponent to have. And in response, of course, my opponent ad nauseums. And ad nauseums for all this stuff. And decides to stop around 16 life with 11 cards in hand. Wow, what a lucky guess. Anyway, anyway, and here the power of Honor-Worn Shaku, if it wasn't already clear from the earlier games and what I've been doing before, really makes itself known in that, first of all, we're going to attack, draw a card, and lucky me, well, it's not too useful. I'm going to go ahead and try and tap my Rog for some mana and then draw some more cards and see if I can find something here. Oh, there's a Mox Diamond and an Opposition Agent, so maybe if I leave my opponent, if one of these cards is like a, yeah, Vampiric Tutor, if I leave the Vampiric Tutor in my opponent's hand, these are the 11 cards, there's always a chance that the Opposition Agent will deal with it. But as it turns out, I don't need to worry about all that because I have Honor-Worn Shaku powering up the exact mana that I need to do an X equals 11 Mind Twist and dismiss all of the cards from my opponent's hand. And from there, well, it's over. Amazing, right? If my opponent had drawn Time Twister or Wheel of Fortune, of course, they could have just immediately won the game. Draw Time Twister, play the mana to cast Thassa's Oracle and kill me. Like that's sort of the way you do it. Or draw Underworld Breach and just kill me from there. Both of those would have worked quite well. Singular cards that just win the game, but we're okay. Didn't happen, and I managed to pull a win out. It's pretty satisfying, actually. I don't remember the last time I Mind Twisted for 11. Anyway, super cool. hopefully you enjoyed watching the deck in action. It's a very fun deck to play, and it does make for some good videos. So that's all I've got now. So yeah, keep an eye out for that card I mentioned in the next set when it comes, and hopefully you enjoy playing this deck if you give it a shot. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.